Yo, Senator Lummis confirmed she is leaving in 2027. That's right. She is not going to be running for re-election, which is leaving many people to wonder, what does this mean for the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Initiative? Senator Lummis was one of the main advocates in the Senate pushing for the United States to buy 1 million Bitcoin. But now we've got no Senator Lummis, no Bo Hines, and still no Bitcoin buys. It's been 9 months since President Donald Trump signed the Bitcoin Executive Order. So what is actually going to happen with the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve in America? Of course, we have a ton of source material for you guys. We have the betting markets. The betting markets aren't looking so optimistic about it either. Guys, it's going to be an incredible show. Stay tuned, and let's jump straight into the source material. So what am I talking about today, ladies and gentlemen? So let's start off with Bo Hines. So you guys remember this a couple of weeks ago, a couple months ago at this point. Bo Hines, which was the biggest Bitcoin advocate, in my opinion, other than the AI crypto czar David Sachs, in the White House. You saw him in every single interview. Every single interview, he was advocating for a strategic Bitcoin reserve, how it was going to happen, how it was an inevitability. And then a couple months into his stint at the White House, he resigned. And then shortly after, you had this like funky thing that was happening where Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent would go on legacy media and he would say, we're really focusing on gold. There was a lot of pushback from the community, and then he kind of walked it back with the post. Anyways, it was all very suspicious. At that point, when that happened, initially we told you guys on Simply Bitcoin, we said, this is probably not a good thing for the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Initiative in the United States. And I remember shortly after he left the administration, he joined Tether, right? Which again, great Bitcoin company and spreading digital assets all around the world. But anyhow, so this was like the first alarm signal. The second alarm signal, I have a soft spot for Senator Lummis. Senator Lummis gave me my first interview with a United States senator. I had the honor and the pleasure of being able to interview her inauguration week in Washington, D.C., January of this year. And I remember I was so hyped because she was talking about the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. She was talking about how she was becoming part of the Senate Banking Committee, which is a big deal from a policy perspective to have a Bitcoiner in the Senate Banking Committee. Remember, the other side, the head of the Senate Banking Committee for the Democratic Party is Elizabeth Warren, right? So just to kind of give you an idea of how important that committee is. And Senator Lummis, I think it was on Friday actually, she announced that she is not going to be running for re-election. To clarify, she will be doing everything in her power to continue to push on and advocate for digital assets in the United States next year. So she still has a whole year before her term expires, but she's not going to be running for re-election in 2027 moving forward. There's no way to cut this. There's no way to spin this. There's no way to make this better. This is a big loss for the Bitcoin community. She was the Bitcoin senator. She was hardcore. She had principles. I remember one of the last things she said when she's talking about the interview. She says, like, listen, this Strategic Bitcoin Reserve is one of the things that my generation could do for your generation to right the wrongs of fiat. That was one of the most powerful things she said when I got to interview her in DC. And unfortunately, she's not going to be running for re-election. I do want to thank Senator Lummis and her amazing team. Got to speak with them last week for everything that they've contributed to the Bitcoin space, the Bitcoin movement. It's been fantastic. It's been incredible that we have an advocate for Bitcoin on the upper house of the the U.S. legislative body, right? So I do want to thank Senator Lummis for her service, but this is a big hit. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to try to spin it. So anyways, She says, it's an incredible honor to represent Wyoming in the U.S. Senate. And throughout my time here, Wyoming has been my one and only priority. What a blessing to serve with Senators John Barrasso and Mike Enzi. When I was in the U.S. House and with John and Representative Harriet Hagman while I've been in the Senate. We all put Wyoming first, which has cemented our cohesive working relationship. Deciding not to run for re-election represent a change of heart for me. But in the difficult, exhausting sessions weeks this fall, I've come to accept that I do not have 6 more years in me. I'm a devout legislator, but I feel like a sprinter in a marathon. The energy required doesn't match up. I'm honored to have earned the support of President Trump and to have the opportunity to work side by side with him to fight for the people of Wyoming. I look forward to continuing this partnership and throwing all my energy into bringing important legislation to his desk in 2026 and into retaining common sense Republican control of the U.S. Senate. Thank you, Wyoming. So let's do a couple of things to break down what she just said. Thing number 1, the Republicans will more than likely keep the Senate next year. More than likely, they will lose the House next year as things currently stand. That's thing number 2. Thing number 3, the Clarity Act has a high probability of passing in Q1 or Q2 of 2026. The Clarity Act, more than the Genius Act, is actually a bigger win for our industry in terms of, again, it's in the name, regulatory clarity. And of course, when you have regulatory clarity, you have a lot of confidence from the big banks, from large institutional players to invest in digital assets, to invest in Bitcoin without fear of uncertainty, without fear of an incoming administration coming in and reversing all of the things the Trump administration did. Remember, an executive order can be reversed by a future president. Something that goes through legislation and gets passed in Congress, it's much harder to reverse. And as Senator Lummis has said many, many times, they have done all of these things in a bipartisan fashion. So it's not been all complete support from the Democratic Party, but a lot of Democrats supported the Genius Act, and a lot of Democrats will support the Clarity Act as well. So I do want to thank Senator Lummis for her service, but I'm not going to, put a cherry on top and say this is amazing news or this is fantastic. Losing Bo Hines and then losing Senator Lummis is just it's a big loss for the Bitcoin Reserve movement. In the United States. You can cut that in 2 different ways. You could say, Nico, that's a good thing. We actually don't want more nation states acquiring Bitcoin. Or you can look at it from a more number go up perspective and say, listen, if there's not going to be a strategic Bitcoin reserve, then you're not going to see these wild price swings to the the upwards direction, because we were telling you guys this throughout the year. And there is a lot more certainty earlier on this year. That look, I said, if the United States announces a strategic Bitcoin reserve and they announce that they bought 500,000 Bitcoin or something like that, I'll tell you guys, the price of Bitcoin would probably go to $500,000 within a year, right? Because it would just create a Bitcoin arms race worldwide, right? So anyhow, let's talk about this. So the U.S. Bitcoin Reserve, the Polymarket odds now have it at less than 1%. And just to kind of give you guys reference, right? In the beginning of the year, in March of 2025, the betting markets had it at a 77% probability that it was going to happen, right? And then when Bo Hines resigned, right, which was in August, right, you can see that it went from a 35% chance down to a 20% chance. And now with the Senator Lummis announcement, you have it at less than 1%. Now, if you are taking more of a long-term view of this, here is the betting, even though it doesn't have that much volume, but still, I love the betting markets, gives it a more The betting markets have been more accurate at predicting elections, predicting results, because again, people put money on the line. It's not just a pollster. A pollster can be compromised. They can be paid off. When people put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, when they have something at stake, right, it tends to, create more accurate results. Now, here are the odds currently as they stand for a U.S. national Bitcoin reserve before 2027. It's currently at 27%. So check this out. We went from 77% in March of 2025 to 2027, right? So 2026, it's all the way down to 27%. And we lost our two biggest advocates for a strategic Bitcoin reserve in the same calendar year. Bo Hines, who again is with Tether, and you have Senator Lummis, who is announcing that she is no longer running for, the United States Senate in 2027. There's no way to cut it. There's no way to sugarcoat it. I think this is a big loss for the movement. I think that, and I'll get to this. I think there's a rabbit hole here, and I'll kind of connect it with what was happening with Elon and all that stuff. There's no way to slice this. There's no way to spin this. There's no way to cut this. There's no way to reframe this. We had our two biggest advocates basically resign and announce that they're not running for office. Now, Senator Lummis is still going to have a year in office, and she's going to do her best. She's going to work. Her team is going to work on digital asset legislation. But again, as a political junkie, I'm looking at this from the outside, and what I'm seeing is, and she kind of says this in her statement. I'll pull it back up again, just so you guys could see it with me. But look, she says this in her statement. This isn't just me speculating. Decide not to run for re-election doesn't represent a change of heart for me, but in the difficult, exhausting session weeks this fall, I've come to accept that I do not have 6 more years in me. I'm a devout legislator, but I feel like a sprinter in a marathon. I feel like that line really gives the tell, right? So what I think that Senator Lummis ran into, and I think that what Bo Hines ran into, is bureaucracy. You can call it the administrative state. You call it the deep state. I don't even call it the deep state. It's just the administrative states. It's the unelected bureaucracy that remains in power no matter who gets elected. And that unelected bureaucracy gets a tremendous amount of power and influence over United States politics because they are powered or funded by the United States Federal Reserve, right? And what we've seen this entire year is that the United States Federal Reserve has not been acting in a neutral fashion. They've been acting in a, I would say, they've been acting extremely politically. I think they've been picking sides. I think that they've tried to sabotage the Trump administration's first year, so that essentially by the time the midterms come around, he's no longer really a threat to them, right? Because once the Democrats take back in power, we know what the Democrats stand. Not all of them, but we know how the Democrats feel about Bitcoin, right? They want a central bank digital currency. They don't want Bitcoin. The Trump administration and the GOP have made it part of their official party platform that they will stand for digital assets, they'll stand for stable coins, and they'll stand for Bitcoin, and they'll stand for the right to self-custody. If you're the Federal Reserve, what do you want competition, or do you want a complete and utter monopoly, right? So I don't blame them for acting, in their own interest, but that is something to be talked about. And I think what happened with Bo Hines, and I think what happened with Senator Lummis, is that they ran into this machine that specializes in ensuring its survival, right? That's literally what this bureaucracy, this massive bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. is. You saw a glimpse of that when Elon went in there with Doge. Now Doge is officially shut down. but you saw it was a combination of the legacy media attacking what Elon was doing. And then it was a combination of, you saw it every single day on X. It was like politicians would stand in front of buildings and say, oh my God, the world's going to burn down. You know, like he's cutting all these things that shouldn't be cut, even though there were so many inefficiencies that were discovered. I mean, this was just announced the other day. The Pentagon just failed its 8th audit in a row, right? So there's no accountability whatsoever. And why would there be any accountability at all, right? So again, I think this is what Bo Hines ran into. I think that this is what Senator Lummis ran into, and I think it's utterly exhausting, right? And I think that's why Elon left. I think that's why Bo Hines left. And I think this is why Senator Lummis, she's being very clear with you guys. She's saying, listen, this is going to require a ton of energy. I want to sprint to get all of this stuff done. But I've come to realize that this is going to be a marathon, right? This is going to take a lot longer than what everybody anticipated. And of course, like it's, you know, ladies and gentlemen, this is the separation of money and state. What did you expect? Did you expect something different? Did you expect for them just to give the keys over and say, all right, guys, you found better money. Here you go. You know, go do your thing, right? No, it's going to take it was always going to take a lot longer. And I think these are the lessons that we're learning. But this is why it's so important for you to stay in the fight, next man up, right? Keep your head up. And again, get pro-Bitcoin, anti-CBDC people in Congress and positions of power. And again, that is how slowly but surely you will get the strategic Bitcoin reserve. It needs you need the political will, but we've lost the momentum. And I think that's what I want to talk about on today's intro. We've lost the momentum. We've lost the momentum bigly. And I don't think we're going to get this strategic Bitcoin reserve anytime soon. And we had the opportunity in the beginning of the year. We just didn't run fast enough to capitalize on it. That's my take on all this. And yeah, I mean, Senator Lummis, thank you for your service. Bo Hines, I think you did an incredible job as well. But that's how things stand. And that's not my opinion. The betting odds seem to agree with me as well. But anyways, now what is the bright side of all this? The bright side of all this is, again, a lot of smart people were advocating for there shouldn't be a strategic Bitcoin reserve, right? You don't want governments to have all of this Bitcoin. Maybe from a number go up perspective, it's positive, but from Bitcoin's core mission of the separation of money and state and ending this monopoly by central banks, you actually don't want the government to hold all this Bitcoin. You actually want these initiatives to start happening on the state level, which they are happening on the state level. I think the state of Texas announced the other day that they bought $5 million worth of Bitcoin exposure. That's the type of movement that you want, right? And that's exactly what's happening, right? So the silver lining is that again, you have more time to acquire more cheap Bitcoin because inevitably governments are going to buy this. Like, this is just a delay. They're going to buy this. This is an inevitability. Bitcoin is the best money the world has ever seen by a long shot. So again, they're just going to buy it at a much higher price. I remember having an interview with Adam Back, and he was saying, like, look, like governments are just going to buy it at a much higher price than they are now. If they don't want to take advantage of $100,000 Bitcoin, $80,000 Bitcoin, they'll buy it at $500,000 Bitcoin, right? So again, from a number go up perspective, I wouldn't say it's very, very bullish news. From a kind of Bitcoin mission perspective, it's incredibly bullish news because, again, it gives you, the individual, more opportunity to acquire cheap Bitcoin and more opportunity for individuals to hold the lion's share of Bitcoin rather than institutions and governments. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, if the Bitcoin revolution is to succeed, it's going to succeed on an individual level. It's not going to succeed succeed if it's driven by the institutions or if it's driven by the government. We kind of saw a glimpse of that in El Salvador. In El Salvador, you had, you know, the launch of Bitcoin as legal tender. You had the launch of the Chivo app, but it was more top down. And what you saw is you didn't really see that much adoption. Like I applaud Nayib Bukele for making Bitcoin legal tender. I think it was a fantastic move. In a way, Bitcoin still is a form of, you could still use it as money in El Salvador, right? But that's not how you want Bitcoin adoption to happen. You want Bitcoin adoption to happen from the bottom up. Fundamentally, Bitcoin is a grassroots movement, right? So anyhow, interesting news starting it off. I don't think the strategic Bitcoin reserve is going to happen in 2025. I don't think it's going to happen in 2026. Let's see if it happens within Trump's first term. He is heavily incentivized for this to happen. He has one of the top 10 largest strategic Bitcoin reserves. I mean, Bitcoin treasury companies. His company just announced that they bought, you know, more Bitcoin. I think it was today or yesterday. So he's heavily incentivized for number to go up. He's heavily incentivized for Bitcoin to succeed. His kids, Eric Trump, heavily involved in the sector. They're speaking at conferences left and right. Their own company, I think it's called American Bitcoin. Again, they're heavily exposed to the markets. And the reality is this, ladies and gentlemen, 2025 was not that great of a year for Bitcoin. Year to date, it's down. I think it's like 6%. If you go back 365 days, it's down as well. So Bitcoin hasn't had a great year. Now let's see what happens in 2027 and 2026. Is it going to finally break the cycles? Are we going to have an explosive rally? Let's see. I think that's yet to be determined, but Bitcoin has never had 2 years back to back in the red. So if we end the year in this 90K, 88, 85K region, and that's what the price is in December 31st of 2025 heading into January, that would mean that all Bitcoin would need to do is go up from there, right? So that to 2026 is uncharted territory. We don't know where Bitcoin's going to end up. And I think that's the big question on everybody's minds. No one knows the answer to it. And that makes me incredibly effing bullish and excited. And the reason for that is for the first time in a long time, we have uncertainty in the markets. And you want uncertainty in the markets. You want people not to know exactly what's going to happen. Because if someone tells you that something is guaranteed to happen in the markets, usually the exact opposite tends to happen. And that's exactly what we saw this year. Everyone and their mother, we are guilty of this ourselves. We're extremely bullish on Q3 and Q4 of 2025. It's the year after the halving. It tends to go parabolic. And you know what happened? The exact opposite. It was bearish. They were the most bearish the year after the halving performances ever in Bitcoin's history. So what happened? The market did exactly the opposite of what everyone else is expecting. So what does the majority, what does the consensus think Bitcoin is going to do heading into 2026? Everyone feels bearish. Most people say, listen, the cycle is over. It's done. You know, you had Senator Lummis announcing she's not running for re-election. You have Bo Hines resigning. The strategic Bitcoin reserve isn't happening. It looks like the Republicans are going to lose the House. Like, everyone has this negative sentiment. They're expecting, you know, downward, you know, price action. And again, markets do the exact opposite. So heading into 2026, we might actually have an incredibly bullish year. But that is yet to be determined. Guys, if you're enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Consider subscribing. This is my first time hosting the show by myself. Opti right now is at home. He's with his family. He's enjoying the Christmas week. So I'm going to be holding it down this entire week. I'm going to have Sophie as a guest. I'm going to have Luke as a guest. It's going to be a great week. Tons of content for you guys. So stay tuned. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing. We still have a ton of things to get to. We're going to be right back in just a bit. Today's episode is brought to you by Bitcoin Well Infinite. If you're a serious Bitcoin buyer, you've probably hit the same wall. Most platforms make you give up custody just to play by the rules. Bitcoin Well Infinite fixes that. They're North America's only publicly traded, non-custodial OTC desk listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, which means transparent operations and zero counterparty risk.
You buy Bitcoin, you take immediate control, period. For trades over $50,000, you get a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, competitive spread starting at 1%, and immediate delivery straight to your own wallet. No custody risk, no withdrawal fees, just institutional grade execution with full asset control. If you want to buy Bitcoin the right way, book a free consultation at bitcoinwell.com/OTC or email infinite@bitcoinwell.com.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, StampSeed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? StampSeed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them down on paper. Paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on StampSeed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store. Hi, everybody. We are back. Guys, go to stampseed.com today. Use promo code SIMPLY. Get 15% off anything on their store. Don't write down your seed words on paper. Stamp them into titanium. Get yourself a stamp seed kit today. Stampseed.com, promo code SIMPLY. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $89,400. Block height 929,007. Market cap 1.78 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap 5.67%. Decline from all-time high, negative 92.2%. Anyways, moving on to I got something interesting. I got something spicy for you guys. Senator Warren going head-to-head with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Look, at the end of the day, ultimately, what I've come to terms with, what I've come to the realization to, is that I think Senator Warren, all she wants is just control. I think that's what it boils down to. I think she's using all these excuses. I think she's using all this language. I think she's using moral virtue to really kind of obfuscate what she's really after. I think she wants control. I think she wants more control over your lives. I think she wants a monopoly over money. That's why she wants a central bank digital currency. And I think she's willing to say anything and everything in order to achieve those means, right? That end goal. So, you know, she goes on and she says, the Trump administration wants to turn the clock back to 2008 and let Wall Street run wild. We all know how that ended, with taxpayers bailing out Wall Street while millions lost their homes and got fired from their jobs. Donald Trump could be setting the stage for the next crash. And then here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent replying directly to Elizabeth Warren. And she says, with apologies, Senator Warren, you can't memory hold three of the largest U.S. bank failures, Silicon Valley Bank, Silvergate Bank, and Signature Bank, which occurred in 2023, all under the senator's beloved and ill-conceived regulatory straitjacket as enforced by the Biden administration. Overregulation is not the solution to what ails the American banking system. Rigorous, responsible supervision is. The initial report on the 2023 debacle by former vice chairman for supervision, Michael Barr, was was an exercise in obfuscation and sophistry. The American people deserve supervisors who are not asleep at the wheel, and the incoming chairman of the Federal Reserve should not undertake a thorough investigation of the systemic and oversight failures that led to that disaster. So, and then you kind of you sprinkle in all the things that happened under Operation Choke Point 2.0, and it kind of leads you to a simple conclusion. I don't think Senator Warren is actually interested in the well-being of the American people. I don't think she's interested in, this regulatory oversight that is going to help her constituents, because if she was actually interested in all of these things, Senator Warren would be the biggest advocate of Bitcoin, because the Bitcoin is literally the only money the world has ever seen that is actually going to protect the lower and middle classes from the ravages of inflation. So again, she's saying all of these things about, oh my God, the Trump administration, he's deregulating the financial system, and that's going to lead to a crash. But that leads to an even deeper point, right? Like these are the same excuses that were used to establish the Federal Reserve. The whole point of the Federal Reserve was, look, if we don't have the Federal Reserve, you're going to have these crazy crashes in the market. Unemployment is going to go crazy. And you don't want the wildcat era coming back. Like, those are all of the excuses that were used. And if you take a look at not what the theory was, but if you take a look at what the results have been over the last 100 years, the Federal Reserve has been a complete and utter failure. The two largest depressions and recessions in American history happened during the Federal Reserve, the 1930s and then the 2008 Great Recession, right? And then there's been a bunch of market downturns in the middle. And then not to mention the fact that the Federal Reserve is the largest cause of wealth inequality in the United States. Every time the Federal Reserve prints money for whatever reason, it is a redistribution of wealth from the lower and middle classes to the very wealthy and back to the government. So Elizabeth Warren markets herself as speaking on behalf of the people. She wants what's best for you. She doesn't want Donald Trump to run wild and deregulate the economy and do all these things because that's going to hurt the little guy. Well, my message to Elizabeth Warren is, if you really want to help the little guy, you should be 100% behind Bitcoin. But she's not, because I don't think she's interested in helping the little guy. What I think she's doing is she's using the marketing gimmick of, oh, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help the little guy, to really hide what she's actually after. And what she's actually after is control, more control over your life. And that's exactly what a central bank digital currency is going to enable. And also more wealth for the government, like more control for the government, more power for the government. And that's what she's really after. So again, I love one of my favorite things about Bitcoin that I think not enough people talk about is that it has this ability to expose incentives like nothing else. And I think what Bitcoin really exposes with Elizabeth Warren is that she's a hypocrite, is that she actually doesn't want what is best for her constituents. What she actually wants is more power and control for the bureaucracy in DC that fundamentally believe that they can run your life better than you can run it yourselves. Basically, they think you're stupid. That's basically what it means, right? But anyhow, moving on to the next segment, guys, we still have tons to cover. Actually, here's Simon Dixon, and he has a pretty good take on all of this. Let me read you this. He says, you're learning how power really works right now for one reason. Power is managing the weakening of the dollar. What you're discovering, what's making you angry, popped up the dollar. They weren't bugs, they were features. Your outrage is useful because once you realize that much of what you believed about how the US works was a lie, the old story breaks. That's why this is surfacing right now. What they're not telling you is that what remains hidden is much worse. The empire has no close. The handover from the British Empire to the U.S. Empire was a managed transition. Everything was hidden to preserve continuity. This transition is different. You're being allowed to see some of what sustained the empire, but what you still don't see is far more destabilizing than what you do. There's no rewind, no reform, no rescue. Nothing stops this train. And what he's referencing is the release of the Epstein files, which again correlates to what I've been talking about. Congress passed a law to release these files, right? And I don't know if you guys have been in the know. I don't know if you guys have seen it or not seen it, but basically all the files were redacted. So like, what's the point of like electing these representatives and then them voting on a subject? And then even though the subject gets voted on and it's like by law, you have to release these files, when they get released, it's you just using pages and pages of retraction. It's like, what are we doing here? Like what's really going on? And this boils down to the fundamental issue. Ladies and gentlemen, it really boils down to this. It's not rocket science. No one should have the ability to create money for free that someone else has to work for. It completely misaligns incentives. And this is why Satoshi created Bitcoin. This is what the Bitcoin revolution is all about. And again, as long as the government has the ability to create money for free, you're going to have more politicians like Elizabeth Warren. You're going to have a whole system that is meant to protect that privilege rather than to act on your best interest. And fundamentally, we are sold on government on the idea that government is supposed to represent you. The government is supposed to be a government by the people, for the people. As the system currently stands, it's a system that is a government by the government, for the government. As long as they have the money printer, that's always going to be the case. That is inherently what is wrong with the system. That is something that Bitcoiners fundamentally know. And this is something that, again, you guys have the ability to change that. And you don't have to change that using violence. You don't have to change that using a revolution or you know, getting or voting someone in power. Clearly that didn't work. Like I had such high expectations for the Trump administration, and they've done a tremendous amount of good. I hope they free the Samurai Wallet developers. But as you could see, when Elon got in there, what happened? He ran into a wall. When Bo Hines got in there, what happened? He ran into a wall. With Senator Lummis putting so much energy into passing this legislation, into passing the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act, what happened? She ran into a bureaucratic wall. And that bureaucratic wall is always going to exist as long as they have the ability to print money. And of course, El Salvador is an amazing case study. Why do you think they've attacked El Salvador the way they have? This is a tiny country with a GDP of $32 billion. Elon Musk's net worth is $700 billion, just to kind of give you an idea. It's a very small country. It's a developing country. Why do you think that the IMF went through such lengths for them to reverse Bitcoin as legal tender? Why do you think you saw all of the legacy media attack Nayib Bukele the way they did? Why do you think all of that happened? Because Nayib Bukele is proving that you can have a government that functions and actually fulfills its core responsibilities. And what that does is it embarrasses all the other governments that are not able to do that. And the reason they're not able to do that is because they're not incentivized to. You wouldn't be incentivized to. Look, under a sound money standard, the only way for a government to raise revenue, the only way for a government to pay for anything is via direct taxation. Under a fiat money standard, all governments have to do is just print more money. Nayib Bukele said it himself when he made his speech at CPAC. He said it. He's like, I don't need, like, why are you getting taxed if the government could just print the money and pay for everything that way? It's a form of control. It's a lie. It's a fugazi. It's a perception. It's for you to have the perception that your vote counts. But if a vote gets passed in the House for the Epstein files to get released, and then what gets released is hundreds of redacted pages, then what is the point? If there is a whole bureaucracy that is behind the government that is unelected and that remains in power regardless of who gets elected and can't be fired, then how are they accountable? They're not accountable. Oh, and by the way, they have a self-funding mechanism. They're not accountable either. So anyhow, Bitcoin fixes this, but only if enough people take self-custody, only if people start critically thinking, and only if people wake up and realize what is actually going on. You're not going to vote yourself out of this the traditional way. We tried that with Trump. I had high expectations. I had high hopes. And I think he's done an amazing job with the constraints that he has. So I'm not really blaming Trump 100%. I think he's done amazing for our industry. Ending Operation Choke Point 2.0. I hope he frees the Samurai Wallet developers. I think he's done a fantastic job. But, ladies and gentlemen, the fundamental issue here is the administrative state. And what funds the administrative state? The Federal Reserve. Why do you think you can't afford anything? The whole mass migration is another topic. Like, why do you think mass migration is happening? Mass migration is happening at the levels it's happening because people aren't having enough babies in Western countries. Why are people not having enough babies in Western countries? Because they can't afford anything. Why can't they afford anything? The Federal Reserve, every time they print money, people who own assets, which tend to be the older generations, their assets go up in value, and everybody who is working and earning for fiat, the lower and middle classes, it tends to be the younger people who haven't had the time to accumulate wealth, their purchasing power gets debased, and that causes the wealth inequality. So if you're a younger person before, in the 1980s and the 1960s and the 1970s, you used to be able to work off one income. You used to be able to live off one income. And you used to have be able to have a life with dignity off of one income. You can't have that anymore. It is impossible. So you need both parents working, or you need to delay having children into a later age, or you come to the conclusion that saying, listen, having children is unaffordable in the first place. So what governments do to paper over that is mass migration. But the reason I'm bringing all of this up is because all of this are symptoms. And then not to mention the short time preference, not to mention this kind of this gambling mentality that people have because they feel hopeless. They don't feel like they can get ahead, right? All of these are symptoms of broken money. All of these are symptoms of a system that is unfair, that is a system that requires coercion for it to function. It's a system that does not represent your best interests. It's a system that represents the best interests of the government. And as long as the government has that self-funding mechanism, you're never going to have a government that truly represents the people. And that is fundamentally the problem. And the founding fathers completely understood this in the United States. They were not fans of central banks. And this is the world we live in today. And this is what Bitcoin is all about. So 2025 was this year that Bitcoin got financialized and that people got very excited about the Bitcoin treasury companies and the ETFs and all of this stuff. But remember, You can't lose your eye. You can't lose your eye on the ball. And what is the end goal here? What is the mission? The mission is to separate money from state. That is the mission. It will fix everything else. Everything else is a symptom of broken money. And before you tell me, you're like, Nico, that makes no sense. That is utter bullshit. How can everything be related to money? Listen, guys, money is half of every transaction. It is the base layer of society. And if the base layer of society is fundamentally corrupt and broken, you don't think that's going to have severe symptoms? Why do you think the first country that made Bitcoin legal tender has the most popular president in the Americas? Why do you think the first country that made Bitcoin legal tender actually figured out the security issue? El Salvador right now has lower crime rates than major U.S. cities, a country that has a $32 billion GDP. Why do you think El Salvador was able to figure it out? Because they fixed the base layer. If you fix the base layer, everything else comes with it. And as Bitcoiners, that's what we have to fight for. And when I say fight, it doesn't mean kinetically. It doesn't mean, at the ballot box. The ballot box is important. But what it truly means is buying Bitcoin, earning Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin, and putting that Bitcoin into self-custody. If enough of us do it, we win, and there's absolutely nothing they could do about it. All right, everybody, we're going to get to the news. We have tons to cover. Smash the like button if you guys are enjoying the show. We're going to be right back in just a bit.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Unlock the liquidity in your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin. They've issued $9 billion in loans to over 10,000 customers since 2018. I absolutely love these guys. Not only do I have an account with them, but I also have a loan. And what I love about them is that there are no monthly payments, and you could pay back the loan at any time. As soon as you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you'll have cash in your account within 24 hours. Over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've never lost a single dollar or sat of customer money. Go to learn.ledin.io/simply today, and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan. I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones? They don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, BitKey. If you already self-custody your Bitcoin, you know the deal with hardware wallets by now. Complex setups, clumsy interfaces, and a seed phrase that can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. BitKey fixes that. BitKey is a multi-sig hardware wallet built by the team behind Square and Cash App. It packs a cryptographic recovery system and built-in inheritance feature into an intuitive, easy-to-use wallet with no seed phrase to sweat over. It's simple, secure, self-custody without the stress. Time named BitKey one of the best inventions of 2024. Get 20% off at bitkey.world. That's BITKEY.world with the code SIMPLY. All right, everybody, guys, go to bitkey.world, ladies and gentlemen, and get yourself a BitKey today. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 20% off anything on their website. Again, promo code SIMPLY to get 20% off. Take your Bitcoin into self-custody. All right, everybody, let's jump into today's news segment. Nick Carter wrote an article regarding the quantum computing threat to Bitcoin. And he's been making the case that this is something that Bitcoiners have been sleeping on, that it is a huge problem. And I made a bit of a summary. So there's been a lot of noise lately about quantum computing and Bitcoin. So the core issue is simple. Bitcoin security relies on elliptic curve cryptography, which is theoretically breakable by sufficiently powerful quantum computer using Shor algorithms. Satoshi knew this and assumed Bitcoin could be upgraded if needed, which is true. Today's quantum machines aren't there yet, but progress is accelerating. 2025 alone saw major breakthroughs in error correction, record funding, and increasingly concrete timelines. Governments are already planning to abandon quantum vulnerable cryptography by the early mid 2030s. If cryptographically relevant quantum computer appears, Bitcoin has real exposure. Roughly 6 to 7 million BTC sit in address types where public keys are exposed. In theory, Bitcoin could mitigate to post-quantum signatures, but that would be the most invasive upgrade in Bitcoin's history and would take many years to debate, implement, and deploy. The hardest problem is abandoned coins. Around 1.7 million BTC, including Satoshis, sit in old address formats that cannot be upgraded. A quantum attacker could seize them instantly, becoming the largest holder. Freezing or confiscating those coins would break a core Bitcoin norm and risk chain splits and loss of trust. The main point is about timing. Even if quantum is a decade away, Bitcoin would need to start prepping now. A surprise or early Q day or quantum day would force rush decisions, emergency forks, and panic, potentially doing more damage than the quantum break itself. Most of the world is already preparing. Governments, banks, and cloud providers can mandate post-quantum upgrades. Decentralized blockchains can't move that fast. Bitcoin is uniquely slow. The uncomfortable conclusion of the article, of Nick Carter's article, is that quantum risk has moved from theoretical to practical, and Bitcoin is not preparing at the pace required. Now, before you freak out or get scared, is exactly what Adam Back said exactly not to do. And of course, I put a lot of weight and confidence into Adam Back because at the end of the day, he is a computer scientist. And at the end of the day, he was mentioned in the Bitcoin white paper, right? So anyways, he did reply to a lot of Nick Carter's posts. Here's the first one. So he posted the article. Someone replied and says, getting scared and not seeing any major Bitcoin develops in replies or quotes. Nick Carter said, as I said in the article, culture of silence and unwillingness to recognize existence of existential threats, not to mention they don't like to take cues from, quote, non-technical outsiders such as myself, very insular culture. Adam Back replies with, Bitcoin development doesn't really have a marketing department. It's not a culture of silence. If you go look at Optech, pseudo quantum talk videos, various papers, BIPs, etc., it's just not antagonistic and mostly not on Twitter. Don't use marketing tactics to amplify. I think Adam has a really good point here. He says, be prepared, not scared on the Bitcoin quantum topic. And then Adam Back reposted this and said, traveler documenter Satosh Sat of She agrees with Adam Back. Quantum computing is a bubble that won't crack Bitcoin's curve or algorithm anytime soon, estimating 30 to 50 years if Moore's law applies. Why it matters. This pushes back against quantum fears in crypto. Adam Back reposted that. And then here are some most recent posts by Adam Back. Nick Carter says, Bitcoiners are in denial about quantum risk, so they are accusing me of a conflict of interest. Again, Nick Carter is a well-known VC. Of course, you know, he's known for investing in certain companies. So if one of the companies that he's investing in is a company that's trying to tackle this quantum problem, right, you can see where there's a conflict of interest. So that's what people are saying online. Adam Back responds with, Bitcoiners and developers are not in denial about defensively doing the R&D to prepare for future quantum computers, but they're just quietly doing research while you make uninformed noise and try to move the market or something. You're not helping. Nick Carter replies with, Adam, you know that many devs are in total denial about quantum risk. Go ahead and ask them. I can name a few if you want. The urgency of research progress isn't sufficient, is my point. Obviously, some work is being done, but not enough. You know that BIPs need a ton of traction before they have any hope of getting included. I'm helping by funding P11, which has contributed original cryptography research on PQ SIGs optimized for blockchains, if you care to take a look. Adam Back responds with, others are working on it, and not everyone could work on it as its cryptography and newer algorithms. As you know, Blockstream Research has been driving and collaborating on Bitcoin-related crypto like Schnorr, Mugsig, and Taproot for years. So it is now with PQ and others. Nick Carter says, Taproot only increased Bitcoin's quantum exposure, as you know, and now we have to fork to fix it. Maybe you should have been a little more foresighted about quantum risk, a little uninformed if you ask me. Adam Back replies with, no, I don't think you understand. Taproot design has quantum secure tweak scheme from the onset, and adding PQ secure signature if statement under Taproot is the simple and efficient way to get quantum readiness. I was referring also to recent work on PQ signatures. Anyways, so they're going back and forth. I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that this quantum thing is overblown? Do you think that it's a real risk to Bitcoin? I'll let you know what I think, my personal opinions on this topic. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you guys think that this quantum thing is going to break Bitcoin within 5 years, within 10 years? I think eventually quantum computing could potentially be a risk to Bitcoin. I just don't think it's something that's going to happen in the next 10 years. I really don't. I think that's something that we should be prepared for as a community. I think it's something that a lot of smart people are trying to figure out. I like the fact that there is a debate, you know, between Nick Carter and Adam Back. That obviously brings that raises awareness to it. Lop had some thoughts on it as well. I think the messy part also too, it's something to take into consideration, guys, is that fork is going to be very messy, right? Bitcoin's really never had a hard fork before. Right? Every hard fork ends up becoming like a Bitcoin Cash or a BSV, but Bitcoin has never had a hard fork. And to have a quantum resistant protocol or algorithm, you're going to need a hard fork of some sorts, right? You're going to need a very, very, you know, a very big decision is going to have to be made. And, you know, Bitcoin's decentralization comes with some pros, but some of the cons that come with it is that it's very, very difficult to, you know, upgrade cohesively as a whole. People have to do it willingly. People have to volunteer. People have to go along with that. Like, I mean, look at what happened with Core 30 and with Knots. Like, look at all the fighting that happened with that. So I think that we do have to prepare heading into the future. I think that there is a little bit of FUD. I don't think quantum is going to be a big issue in the next half a decade or decade. But I think in the future, by the 2040s or 2050s, it could be a problem. And I think that is something that, of course, we have to get ahead of. But I think that this like short-term FUD, we've been hearing this FUD. If you guys have been in Bitcoin for a while, we've been hearing this FUD for a very long time now, right? Like every year, the quantum FUD keeps popping back up, right? So I want to I want to know what you guys think in the chat. Please let us know. Do you think that this is do you think that this is overblown? Do you think that this is do you think Nick Carter is blowing it out of proportion? Do you think Adam Back is being too chill? So let me pull up some of the chats. So Home Slice says, "Lol, quantum computing is a bigger risk to things more important than Bitcoin. Software developers will get ahead of this because quantum affects all forms of cybersecurity." It's a really good point, right? And I've said this many times. So quantum computing would break. So your banking, any type of interaction that you have on the internet that requires some type of cryptography, quantum computing would break that, right? So again, it's something that the whole world would have to get ahead of. Someone says, Brandon says, "You don't need a hard fork, just a new signature type. Transactions have version numbers just for this reason." Okay, that's fine. But what about old versions of Bitcoin? What about the Satoshi's unspent Bitcoin? Would that be quantum resistant? Would quantum computers be able to access Satoshi's coins? I mean, like that would be terrible, right? So Hard Hodl said SegWit 2017. Anyone? AF3327 says it's FUD, so governments could buy the dip. Keefy Boy says overblown, yes, but shouldn't we have a couple bips floating around to argue about? Yes, I agree with that. That's actually a really good point. Homesite, I already pulled that up. Let's see here. Daddy OSC says, wouldn't it be cheaper to to extinguish quantum computing? Quantum computing is coming. Bendingo says, of quantum computer hacks Bitcoin, it'll hack the digital banking sooner. 100%. 100%. Someone says, are you pushing FUD? No, I'm not pushing FUD. I'm just showing you guys the drama that was happening on Bitcoin Twitter this week. Nick Carter and Adam Back were going ham back to back. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the culture. We still have tons to cover. We're going to be right back in just a sec. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy, HIVE has quadrupled its global Bitcoin mining footprint and channels that same scale into high performance compute, where their AI cloud is now ranked #1 in the world for network performance. At HIVE, you've got dual engines, Bitcoin and AI humming, roaring, accelerating in unison. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable digital infrastructure. You can catch the latest buzz at Hive Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. I want to give a shout out to our partner, bitcoinben.io. If you're into freedom, Bitcoin, and building a real community, this is for you. Gain exclusive access to real-world, members-only, private clubs across the globe, featuring poker nights, expert-led classes, co-working spaces, educational meetups, live events, and more. Current locations include Sarasota, Nashville, Boston, Dallas, Las Vegas, and St. Louis, with new clubs launching soon in West Palm Beach, Scottsdale, Alabama, and beyond. Not to mention Bitcoin Ben's resorts in El Salvador. There's 3 of them, and they're absolutely beautiful. You'll also get access to the first fully backed Bitcoin bank with fiat ramps and savings accounts. It's called Private Key Bank. And you guessed it, it's based out of El Salvador. Go peer-to-peer with Bitcoin bulk buys. Tap into home equity for long-term Bitcoin growth. And join their exclusive mining pools if you're interested in mining. What are you waiting for? Head over to bitcoinben.io. Join today, where Bitcoin meets freedom. All right, everybody. I do want to pull this up, ladies and gentlemen. So, guys, you guys know the deal. Bitcoin Well, the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack, and we're going to be giving away some Bitcoin today. So get your Lightning wallets ready. We're going to be playing the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest. We're going to be, again, you earn these Bitcoin Wishing Well points every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well. Get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code on the screen today has won 490 sats. If you go to bitcoinwell.com/simply, you get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin wishing well, and every single toss you have an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. So go to bitcoinwell.com/simply today to get started. All right, everybody, during the culture segment today, kind of want to talk a little bit about my personal experience. This is the first time in 5 years I've hosted the show by myself. I've always hosted it with a co-host, always with Opti, always with previous co-hosts on the show, with my wife, with Luke, with Chris. But I've never done a show by myself before. It's always been kind of, with people. So this was a unique experience for me today. I'd love your guys' feedback, how I did, what I could do better, what you guys enjoyed, what you guys didn't enjoy. And I'm going to be doing it a lot more this week too. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. But it was an interesting experience, like not having the back and forth and just holding the show down and just holding the commentary the entire time. I really enjoyed it. Kind of brings me back to the early days of when I started Simply and just, the early days of content creation. So that's the culture segment today. Nico's first time solo hosting Simply Bitcoin. So please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this stuff. But yeah, it's been quite a wild ride. Opti's out of town this week. He's with the family. So we got the first chat. Rambo says, nice job, solo Nico, but next time say Vance Lummis 2028. Hard Hodl says, domo arigato, Nico Roboto. All right, I'll take it. I don't know what that means, but I'll take it. The Vance Lummis, I mean, could you imagine that ticket? That ticket would be awesome, dude. That ticket would be awesome. That ticket would be fantastic for Bitcoin. Let's talk about Vance for a second, too. So he's probably going to be the Republican nominee heading into 2028. He has a very, very pro-Bitcoin stance. I think he's going to continue it. He's going to continue a lot of the pro-Bitcoin legislation that Trump did. So I think that executive order of the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve is going to continue on into his presidency. And I think it's very important. I told you guys today, right? The most important thing you could do is taking Bitcoin into self-custody as an individual, but voting at the ballot box still has a lot of influence, right? This is how we got Ross free, and this is potentially how we got the Samurai Wallet developers free. I mean, you saw President Trump take a question at a press conference regarding that matter. Let's see if he follows through, but obviously having a pro-Bitcoin administration is much better than having an anti-Bitcoin administration. Like Operation Choke Point 2.0 was horrible. Like that was not nice. So having Vance in the White House would be great. And a Vance Lummis ticket, oh my God, bro. Ugh. I think we would get a strategic Bitcoin reserve at that point, for sure. Let's check out some of these comments. So you did a good job, Nico, but you're just too bearish and negative for my liking. You know what? I'm telling you exactly. I'm speaking from the heart, right? Like if not, I'd be lying, right? And I don't want to lie to you guys, right? Like in the beginning of the year, I was extremely bullish. I was very optimistic, but I think right now I'm being realistic in terms of where we are, right? The 4-year cycle is still intact. The meme of the 3 green, 1 red, that has officially broken. So the question on everybody's minds is 2026 going to be a continuation of the bear market year? Or is 2026 going to break with every single other Bitcoin cycle that has ever existed? And we have this mind-blowing, this mind-blowing year in Bitcoin. Could that be possible? Absolutely. But right now, what I'm seeing, an observation is the 4-year cycle still intact, right? Bitcoin literally peaked where it always peaks on these cycles. Now, the question is it gonna, are we gonna see Are we going to see something that breaks from that, right? Now, I will tell you something. If we do head into a deeper bear market, I don't see a 70, 80% correction. It's possible, but I just don't see it because we never had a blow off top. We never had a euphoria phase, right? But what I really like from like a market standpoint, from a market perspective, is that nobody knows what is going to happen with Bitcoin. Uncertainty is back. And I love the uncertainty because that creates the perfect situation for you to have these crazy parabolas. Like in the beginning of 2017, if I told you that Bitcoin was going to 20x in a year, you would not have believed me. If I told you that in 2026, Bitcoin was going to 5x in a year, you wouldn't believe me. That's what I mean. The uncertainty and Bitcoin's success is back, and I am here for it, and I love it. It creates the perfect situation. All right, let me read some more of these comments. So Nicki Minaj is being mentioned. The LSM liquidity cycle's intact. What goes up, what goes down. Down Under Blue says a pro-Bitcoin administration doesn't mean your Bitcoin is going to pump, but definitely better than an anti-Bitcoin administration. Bitcoin cycle with macro. Opti talks to you. Nico talks at you. Yeah, under 20K Bitcoin will never happen again. I completely agree with that. Sam says, always appreciate your point of view, Nico, even if I don't always agree. And you're an excellent solo host. Nico Jones is my personal fave. I watch/listen to you guys every day at work. Keep it. I really appreciate it. Was Ron P in the chat today? I didn't see Ron P. Anyways, guys, I think that's the perfect way to close out the show. Guys, if you guys enjoyed today's show, you know what to do. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing. Really appreciate it. I'm going to be holding it down this week while Opti's vacationing. And tomorrow, I think we're going to have Sophie on. We're going to have Luke on later on this week, potentially Chris. And then I'm going to be doing another solo host as well. We don't stop. We're like Bitcoin. TikTok next block. We're going to be streaming on Christmas as well. It is the holiday season, but doesn't matter. Simply Bitcoin doesn't stop. Anyways, guys, love you all. We wouldn't be here without you. If you guys enjoyed the show, smash the like button, share the video with your friends, and we'll be back tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.